Want to play roulette? Here's a tip. European roulette has a lower house edge than American style. The lower the house edge, the better shot you have at winning. Most online casinos offer European roulette. So, if I were you, I'd get spinning. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribes, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market conservatively. It could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
King of the featherweight division for the BKFC. That is King Kai Stewart, who is joining us now, still the champion of the featherweights.
Though he did get dominated, he was still throwing big shots. He landed a lot bigger shots on Palomino than he did me, and I wasn't really impressed. Palomino's getting older. He is definitely a former GOAT. He has done amazing things in this sport, but it's just my time.
Only on Sport.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid on this Friday as we close in on next week's coverage of the NFL Draft. Make sure you keep it locked here all week long next week as we close out this week with a little bit of a breather and then, of course, head into arguably one of the most popular weeks of the year in the month of April. We've got the NFL Draft. We've got our coverage next Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday, so make sure you stay on the grid for that. The NBA playoffs do begin tomorrow. We'll have a preview of some of the games here on the show today. Gilbert McGregor will join us courtesy of Sporting News. Also, Sam McQuillan is with us from Legal Sports Report. And Danny Burke, who is one of the key figures here on our show, taking a look at some of the Major League Baseball odds. He'll join us on the show as well to go over a couple of games this evening in Major League Baseball. But, of course, we begin with a piece of news that certainly our thoughts and prayers are with all of the people in Tallahassee at Florida State University. For those of you who are unaware, yesterday, tragedy once again has struck. 2 people were killed and 5 wounded in a shooting at Florida State University in Tallahassee. Naturally, this is not a sports story, but given the fact that we cover a lot of sports at FSU, basketball, football, baseball, etc., certainly wanted to mention this at the top of the show, and I'm sure coverage everywhere that you could possibly find it continuing here for the distant future would be my guess. All right, let's get to some sports stories here. We'll start in New York. A new bill could be heading our way, and it could max the amount of money that you can bet on sports in the state of New York. How about this? A $5,000 daily betting cap could enter, and it's up for vote. It also includes maximum of 5 deposits per day, which means if you go broke 4 times, you can only do it one more time and make it a 5th. Also banning ads on promo boosts, bonus bets, and no sweat offers. And also, how about this? No ads in between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. or during live games. So New York seems to be taking responsible gambling pretty seriously. We'll see if a bill comes to pass. Meanwhile, it doesn't look like we'll have any clarity where Aaron Rodgers may or may not play in 2025. He said he's taking his time. He went on the Pat McAfee show and essentially has said that the draft is inconsequential for what he wants to do, may retire, may stay playing. He said that he also went to New York and met with the new general manager and essentially said that he didn't need to fly there because they could have just told him on the phone that he didn't need to come. They told him that they were moving on, and you saw the quote there. He also said that, you sure you want to play football? He said yes, and then he said that they're going in another direction. Which direction Aaron Rodgers chooses to go is really anybody's guess at this point, folks. The draft is next week. Doesn't seem like he's going to sign before then. But there is part of what Aaron Rodgers said. Yet again, this is courtesy of the Pat McAfee show. Rodgers still TBD on 2025. That's the bottom line. Also TBD is Dame Lillard on whether or not he'll play in Game 2 for the Milwaukee Bucks. Seems like he's making some good progress here, but he's definitely out for Game 1, although it seems like that this blood-thinning medication that he's taking is working right now. And right now we'll see if Lillard can play in Game 2. That would come up next week for Milwaukee against Indiana. Sacramento Kings are finalizing a deal to hire longtime NBA executive Scott Perry as their new GM. He was with the Kings in 2017. He also was with the Detroit Pistons. So Perry could be joining the Kings in the not-too-distant future. Look for that announcement coming later today or tomorrow. In Major League Baseball, the home run leader is a little bit of a surprise, to say the least. His name is Tyler Soderstrom. He hit his 9th home run yesterday as the A's beat the White Sox 8-0. Lawrence Butler, J.J. Bleday, Brent Rooker also homered, and the A's are playing good baseball. They've won 4 out of 5, and they're only one game under 500 this season, so even despite the move from Oakland to Sacramento, things seem to be going well, and that has Barkatse, their manager, in a good mood.
Today was a great win. These guys have obviously worked really hard, and, I think we've grinded through a few series, but to come in here and get a sweep was really good for the group, and before we head into Milwaukee.
I know we ask you about Soderstrom every day, but another home run today. Just what can you say about his continued success here? Yeah,
a home run off a lefty. That's a tough lefty. Just shows he's continuing to stay with his approach, and when you're hitting the ball hard, it sometimes gets frustrating. But when they obviously go over the fence, it's boring. So he continues to be good. Staying disciplined to his zone and taking good at-bats.
Good at-bats for Riley Green as well. He was in a slump with the Tigers. He breaks out of it. 3 hits, 2 RBIs. The Tigers beat the Royals 6-1. That was the final. Randy Arozarena's time in Seattle is off to a good start again this season. Game-tying home run in the 9th inning and then a 2-run double in the 10th. Flair for the dramatic. He's always had it. The Mariners beat the Reds 11-7 in 10 innings, but the error is really the story. Elly De La Cruz made his 5th. And his 6th error, Terry Francona, the manager of the Reds, didn't single out De La Cruz, but said that mistakes were made in the game.
Well, we made a lot of mistakes. I thought we played with a lot of heart, which is good. We just, we made too many mistakes to win a game like that today.
The 4 errors, major concern going forward, or did you flush this one?
Well, for today, it didn't help us. There's some plays that weren't errors that didn't get made. Made it really tough on Singer early on. He didn't have his best fastball today, and we prolonged that inning and probably cost him an inning too. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just the errors that are on the board.
Yankees beat the Rays final 6-3. Ben Rice was the big winner in yesterday's game. For those of you who played anything with him in DFS, Ben Rice, 4 for 5, 2 RBIs, having a nice year too, batting over 300. OPS over 1,000. Bullpen also did their job. Jazz Chisholm Jr. argued a ball and strike in this game and was thrown out. But needless to say, Ben Rice thinks that his start is legit.
A little weird, being on the visiting side today, but just glad we were able to come out with a win.
Did it feel like early on, did it feel like you guys were lucky to only be down 3-1, or what was the kind of feeling there in the dugout when your pitchers were straining a bunch of their guys early?
Yeah, I think I don't think we felt that way at all. I think it was just on to the next inning, right? Just next pitch, keep winning pitches. Bullpen did a great job tonight, keeping us in it the whole way. Just kept putting us in a position to put some runs up.
Rangers sweep the Angels. They win 5-3 behind Kumar Rocker on the mound for Texas. Also, Bruce Bochy, the manager, he won his 2,183rd game, tying Dusty Baker for 7th all-time. The story in Philadelphia right now is Christopher Sanchez. What a great start to the season he has had. And yesterday, he threw 7 innings and struck out 12 in a win against the San Francisco Giants. 11 of his strikeouts on changeups. He's been as good as advertised going into the season, and Rob Thompson almost speechless with the performance.
Yeah, it was as good as you're going to get, I think. Or as good as I've seen. A lot of swing and miss. It was just diving into the ground. They gave up the home run on a slider, and he hadn't thrown the slider in about 4 innings. So, he was really good today, and we needed that.
What was he doing different with his changeup?
I think he just had it. It's just one of those days where it was just coming out of his hand properly, and he had confidence in it, and he kept throwing it.
Gunnar Henderson's first home run is a big one for the Orioles. They beat the Guardians 6-2. Cleveland's lost 3 of 4. And also in Miami yesterday, the Diamondbacks complete the sweep. Pavin Smith homers in back-to-back games. Josh Naylor also homered as well. The Diamondbacks beat the Marlins 6-4. They've won 5 games in a row. As I mentioned, the NFL draft is coming up next week. A lot of smoke screens going on right now. Cleveland Browns throwing a few different smoke screens out there, so to speak. Their general manager, Andrew Berry, saying that Travis Hunter is a unicorn due to his versatility, actually compared him to Shohei Ohtani, saying that he could play both ways. It says you get a unicorn if you use them both ways. Here's Berry on the potential of drafting Travis Hunter.
I think it's, and I'm going to use a crossboard now, it's a little bit like Ohtani, right? Where, when he's playing one side, he's an outstanding player. If he's a pitcher or he's a hitter, he's an outstanding player. You obviously get a unicorn if you use them both ways. Yeah, I guess without getting in too much into the specific planning, because he's not here. We have a decision, but that's something that's also unique, and it's something that, like I said, every team across the league would have to figure out.
Tre'Davious White re-signs a 1-year contract with the Buffalo Bills. It's where he started. He played on the Rams and Ravens last season, and also Ryan Ramczyk retires from the New Orleans Saints after playing there for 7 years. Justin Thomas leads at the RBC Heritage Open. We'll talk some NBA next. Fantasy baseball. Let's be honest, George. There's a lot of things antiquated about this game that we love. Man, I would love to try some new little wrinkles here. And so for Sam's question here on the show, I think it's at least fair to ask the question with catchers in fantasy baseball. And sometimes we're playing in 2 catcher leagues. Why at this stage of the game? I have no idea. If you're still doing it, you're behind in the times. Buy or sell, catchers should get a fantasy point for throwing out runners trying to steal. So essentially awarding a defensive play to get an offensive point in fantasy. You going to buy or sell this?
I mean, so this never even crossed my mind. I hate the catcher position because they get hurt so much. You play in a 2-catcher league, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, what are we doing here? There are not 24, so we get 12-team league. There are not 24 catchers to draft in baseball. There's just not. Although I'm the first person to tell you, Herrera's probably out there in a bunch of leagues there because we didn't see that power coming. Should he get a point? I think if you're going to do this, by the way, why a point? What are you throwing out? 1, 2 base runners a week? It's 2 points. Who cares? Should it be more? I mean, if we're going to do this, should we do it right? Should it be 5 points? So I'd probably go that direction. If you're going to do it right. Give it more points. And by the way, then let's go further. You make an error, you're losing points. No one gets an error anymore. All right. If you get an error, it means you really screwed up. I was watching that Yankee-Pittsburgh game yesterday because I think it was who cares? Somebody hit the ball hard to Isaiah Khalifa at shortstop. He didn't have to move, but he dropped it. They called it a hit because he hit the ball hard with 3-hopper. Oh, hard hit, error. So let's do that too. So yeah, I'm kind of on board with this, but you need more than one. It can't just be a point that's meaningless. You need more than one.
Fantasy sports today. Weekends starting at 8 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA playoffs begin tomorrow. The teams trying to get there via the play-in will square off tonight in the East and West. We'll have a preview with Gilbert McGregor here of Sporting News. And Gilbert, certainly the talk here in South Florida is surrounding the Miami Heat tonight. The Heat will play a team that they have played quite a bit through the years, the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks have been through it through the years. Seems like they're in this play-in ever since they started. The Hawks, a very slight home favorite tonight, -1. It's basically a money line bet, total 220. It tells you how much the odds makers think that this is a dead even matchup here because the Hawks basically to have any kind of home court advantage should be favored, you would think, by 2.5. Not the case tonight. Tells you this could come down right to the end.
Absolutely. Definitely could come down to the wire, as you mentioned, two teams who are very familiar with one another. And then you have the fact that earlier this week, Miami looked really good while Atlanta did not. So there's momentum at play here. And the Heat looked like they had a couple more players capable of making plays in these spots in the play-in tournament. So I do lean and understand the lean and why it's a kind of a pick 'em with these two games, but I understand the momentum and everything being on Miami's side. And for those reasons, I actually expect them to win tonight.
Yeah, and if they do, they'll face the Cleveland Cavaliers in round one of the NBA playoffs. Meanwhile, Atlanta and Miami have played 4 times. Atlanta won the first 2 matchups this season. Miami won the next 2. And whatever you see from those scores, by the way, folks, I said it could be a close game come down to the end. The odds tell us it will not be a close game. We just don't know who's going to win this game because none of those matchups have been close. All right, so here's the thing, Gilbert. It's a really sneaky idea. I gotta tell you, I'm looking at Dallas right now, and they're, us against the world mentality. We can't be any worse than they are. I don't know. I think I'm taking the points tonight. Dallas +6. It's playing against Memphis. Total of 220.5. I think Dallas got a chance to win this game, Gilbert. I think they got a chance to win a few playoff games too. It seems like whatever happened with them here in the end, it seems like they're coming together at the right time.
You know what, Craig? That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. The Mavericks were dogs earlier this week in Sacramento and won outright, as you know, obviously, because they're still alive in this play-in tournament. And it comes down to oftentimes having the best player in the game. And I think about Anthony Davis against the Grizzlies, and we saw Anthony Davis dominate the Grizzlies, albeit as a member of the Lakers, but in the postseason a few years ago. And I think this was a big opportunity, a big spot for Anthony Davis to show why the Mavericks brought him in. He might not necessarily be Luka Doncic, but he still is Anthony Davis. And is it going to be Jaren Jackson Jr.? Is it going to be Zach Edey? Who's going to be tasked with making life difficult for Anthony Davis? And Anthony Davis having a big night, and somebody like Najee Marshall or somebody else, Klay Thompson, coming off of a big performance as well. Can they replicate that in this game tonight? And if so, at the very least, the Mavericks can cover tonight.
Yeah, and the Mavericks, by the way, going into this the play-in tournament, they were plus 820 to make the playoffs. That's an 8-1 after just winning 2 games. But again, they are big dogs tonight in Memphis, so we'll see what ends up happening. Meanwhile, game 1 between Los Angeles and Denver, they begin their 7-game series. The Nuggets are 2.5-point home favorites against the Los Angeles Clippers. Total 224.5. I think from the Nuggets perspective, they got to be feeling much better. They seem to be playing behind this new interim coach and Jokic and everyone else there. But look, the Clippers have played really good basketball here the last couple of months here. Probably in for a long series. What happens, you think, in game 1?
Yeah, this does feel like the type of series that goes the distance, but specific to game 1, I actually like the Clippers. I like the Clippers' momentum. I like what they've been doing. I think Ty Lue has been using this week to prepare for the Nuggets and all the challenges that they prepare and present to this Clippers team. Kawhi Leonard is playing really well. I know every single game we're kind of holding our breath and making sure he gets it to the next game. And so far, so good with that. James Harden, not a lot of pressure on him right now, not necessarily being the number 1 guy for this team. And Ivica Zubac can no longer be played off the floor, and he's going to be Nikola Jokic's matchup. So it's a good matchup for the Clippers. They've been playing really good basketball. And the Nuggets, while playing well under Adelman, I think that they have a few flaws that the Clippers could exploit in game 1.
The Timberwolves will take on the Los Angeles Lakers. Lakers are big favorites to win the series, but only 4-point favorites when they open up the series at home this weekend. Total of 216.5. Can the Lakers get the job done in game 1? I guess the problem I see here with this series, Gilbert, is I honestly don't think home court's going to mean all that much. I think Minnesota's probably going to go to LA and win 1 game. I think LA is probably going to go to Minnesota, win 1 game too.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that happening in this series. I don't necessarily think it'll happen in game 1, but I think that we'll quickly realize that these teams are really, really close. I know the Lakers are very top-heavy with LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and even Austin Reeves. And Anthony Edwards is right up there in that same tier of player. But the depth that the Timberwolves have, the Naz Reeds, the Nickeil Alexander-Walkers, guys like that can make differences in this series. Dante DiVincenzo, another guy who I see having a big game in this series. In game 1, I think the Lakers, JJ Redick's going to have this team prepared. They're playing at home. The luxury of not having to travel will benefit them, but I do think there will be adjustments made moving forward. That being said, I like the Lakers. So I guess I like both LA teams in game 1.
Well, the Rockets certainly didn't get the matchup that they wanted in their first round series. They had a great regular season, but it could be all for naught. We don't know. They're taking on the Warriors, And ironically, what we've seen here, Gilbert, is a shift in the line. The Golden State Warriors opened up as 1-point favorites. The odds makers have now shifted that back to Houston -1. Not that it means that much of a difference, but I mean, it is home court for Houston. It's a place that's been starving for some really big playoff wins.
Yeah, home court for Houston in a new era of this Warriors-Rockets rivalry. And I know the Warriors played earlier in this week, and I actually like the Rockets in the series, but I think that they're going to learn some hard lessons in game one, and the Warriors will get the job done in game one. The Rockets don't have that much playoff experience, especially when you compare it to Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green. It pales in comparison, but the Rockets are going to learn some lessons in real time. Ime Udoka is going to eventually get this team right. They've had some success against the Warriors in the regular season. Playoffs a different beast, but once they get adjusted to it, I do like the Rockets, but I just like Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler in game one.
Who do you think plays better this weekend of some of the two big favorites here? Do you think that Boston is that team being big favorites this weekend? How about the Knicks being, I believe it's up to 7-point favorites against Detroit?
Yeah, I like Boston. I think that playing against Orlando is going to force them to wake up. We've known the Celtics to kind of loaf, and they really dominated last year. Once it's game twos when they take a step back a little bit. So I expect a statement from Boston. They hear the outside noise. They're going to try to do something about that.
All right. We'll hopefully check out all the action this weekend, Gilbert. We'll check back with you next week as we move forward in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Thanks again for coming on a couple times this week here on NewsWire. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. We've got Gilbert McGregor here with us. Coming up next, Twins and Braves. We'll have a preview of that game tonight, as well as Seattle, Toronto. Danny Burke from Odd Shopper has the latest in baseball next.
Who else? Who can maybe provide a test? Who can maybe be a challenger and a contender elsewhere around the Eastern Conference?
Top two is going to be a runaway. But I guess if I had to choose, Ben, it's going to be the Knicks. At least they have the talent to somehow upset teams that are better than them, but they can't in the regular season. Maybe it changes in the playoffs.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
We know what Chris Sale can bring. I was personally high on Schwallenbach. Smith-Shawver, their other starter, looks okay to kind of bad. They need to I don't want to say tread water, so I think that puts it in a bad light, but that's what they ultimately need to do. They need to tread water until Strider gets back, until Acuna gets back, and maybe it's just part of the team morale mentality that we're not at full strength, need to kick things into gear once those guys get here.
Pro Baseball Today, only on SportsGrid.
They have already decided, it would appear to me, from what you're telling me, that they're satisfied with the quarterback room as it stands now.
Shedeur Sanders does not have the value to go at number 3. I know they need a quarterback. It's about this season with Russell Wilson, okay? No question he's going to be the starter. Winston will back him up. But the future they can get next year.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We've got Danny Burke in the house here for our little segment on Major League Baseball. Take a look at a couple of matchups today, see if Danny likes any positions. Danny, welcome back to the show as we get ready for a big baseball weekend, of course, and it begins tonight. Let's get started. There are some really nice surprises in the Major League Baseball season, without a doubt, and there are some really big disappointments, and that is our focus as we look at this first game in Major League Baseball. My goodness, what is going on? By the way, with both of these teams, I would add. I mean, obviously, nobody had the Braves 5-13 to start the season. Even after they lost a bunch of games in a row, they still have not been able to turn it around. The Twins don't look good either. Neither pitcher is very good on the mound tonight. Braves minus 130 at home. Total 8.5 in this game. Yuck.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Atlanta's been an utter disappointment thus far. And from my perspective, looking at this Atlanta team, I certainly didn't peg them as being the top team in this division, nor do I think most people probably did. Certainly, we thought, hey, they still have a lot of pieces there. They're going to contend, and there's still plenty of time. But yeah, this start that we've seen so far is a bit shocking. Nevertheless, I am taking them in this spot, despite all I said about them, Craig. Minnesota's a team that's just so frustrating with the talent they have, both in their pitching rotation and with some of their hitters. And you see it time and time again, they get caught up in these tough situations. And I think this one specifically is one of those spots where they are going to struggle. Now, I was kind of just praising their pitching rotation, but one of the pitchers that doesn't really deserve that praise is Paddock here, if it looks like he is going to go. And I mean, again, it's a short sample size, and we'll keep saying that at least for the next month, but a 9.49 ERA paired with a 6.65 FIP. Nothing to write home about. He's certainly been susceptible to giving up the long ball, 16% home run to fly ball ratio, walking batters. His skill interactive ERA, kind of looking back at what his true ERA should be, is as high as 5.53. And he got beat up by the White Sox to begin things this year. So all tough indications for somebody you want to back, going against an Atlanta team that is desperate to get into a rhythm here. And we talk about the pitching and both of them maybe being a bit underwhelming themselves, but Bryce Elder does have some signs that he has been, destined to have a better outing, I guess is the way you could put it. He's just been getting shelled in a poor way, to where we know the tools and assets that he has. Yes, a 7.20 ERA to begin isn't ideal, but he's got a 3.49 xFIP, and he's really limiting the walks, which is obviously a great sign to see when you're looking at these batters. Less than 2 walks per 9 innings pitched thus far. His BABIP's been kept under control, and it's only been 2 starts. So I could keep rattling off these underlying metrics, but we know what he's capable of, and you're also understanding, Craig, that he faced the Rays, he faced the Dodgers. The Rays offense is coming alive. We know what the Dodgers are capable of. So going against a very volatile offense in Minnesota, I think Elder has the clear advantage here, and pairing that along with the incentive to get on a nice little win streak here for Atlanta back at home, I think it's worth laying that minus 130 price tonight.
All right, so Braves slight favorites tonight. Normally in this spot, they'd be a much bigger favorite. Meanwhile, looks like a coin flip game tonight in Toronto between the Mariners and Blue Jays. We've got Brian Wu pitching for Seattle, one of the more underrated pitchers in baseball. Bowden Francis has looked good at times this season, but slipped back in his last start. Total 7.5 in this one tonight.
Yeah, this one has a lot to do more so with this specific situation, and that's the game the Mariners are coming off of yesterday. Just an absolute roller coaster against the Cincinnati Reds, heading into extras, and they end up finding a way to win somehow, which seems crazy considering that the Mariners, kind of like the Twins, are a very infuriating bunch that has been playing below their expectations the past couple of years. But hey, their offense is seemingly coming alive. And you mentioned Wu. You're right. He is one of the more underrated pitchers, maybe more underappreciated in general, and not typically a guy I want to be on the opposite side of, but because of what I still deem this Mariners team to be and where I think they slack offensively. And because, again, the most important part is just that game they're coming off of yesterday, now coming to Toronto, a team that's seeming like they're kind of surging at the right time. I like the shorter price here with Toronto. I got about minus 113. Now, Francis, again, his numbers are a little concerning, but kind of like Elder, a guy whose underlying metrics are showing he should be pitching better. His skill interactive ERA 4.17. You'd like that a little bit lower, but it's early. We know what we've seen from him in the past, and I think against a Mariners team that's maybe playing a little bit better than I think they should be, I think this is a good opportunity to take that shorter price here with the Blue Jays. And yeah, I mean, again, Francis played some tough opponents, so I think he'll be able to settle in here at home against the Seattle offense.
All right, Danny, great stuff as always. We'll check back with you next week. Thanks for coming on NewsWire.
Anytime, Craig. Take care.
All right, first game of the day, by the way, 2:20 Eastern today. The Diamondbacks flying from Miami to Chicago to play this afternoon's game against the Cubs. Corbin Burns, by the way, on the mound for the Diamondbacks today. We'll be right back with Sam McQuillan of Legal Sports Report.
Who else? Who can maybe provide a test? Who can maybe be a challenger and a contender elsewhere around the Eastern Conference?
Top two is going to be a runaway. But I guess if I had to choose, Ben, it's going to be the Knicks. At least they have the talent to somehow upset teams that are better than them, but they can't in the regular season. Maybe it changes in the playoffs.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
We know what Chris Sale can bring. I was personally high on Schwallenbach. Smith Shawver, their other starter, looks okay to kind of bad. They need to I don't want to say tread waters. I think that puts it in a bad light, but that's what they ultimately need to do. They need to tread water until Strider gets back, until Acuna gets back, and maybe it's just part of the team morale mentality that we're not at full strength. We need to kick things into gear once those guys get here.
Pro Baseball Today. Only on SportsGrid.
They have already decided, it would appear to me, from what you're telling me, that they're satisfied with the quarterback room as it stands now.
Shedeur Sanders does not have the value to go at number 3. I know they need a quarterback. It's about this season with Russell Wilson, okay? No question he's going to be the starter. Winston will back him up. But the future they can get next year.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Pretty significant sports wagering story coming out yesterday. Potentially new legislature in the state of New York that could change the way that people bet on sports. Let's get into it with Sam McQuillan of Legal Sports Report. Sam, thanks for coming on the show here on this Friday. And, I did see, you obviously post on social media, and I know that there's an article up over at Legal Sports Report. But, I think this is a pretty significant story because if this does happen, a couple of things will change in our world of sports betting. First of all, you have the big state of New York basically saying we're not going to allow people to lose all their money betting on sports. There's going to be a limit to what you can do. And then the second part of this is that if this does go through, it could mean some limitations for other states around the country as well.
Yeah, New York is always a trendsetter when you talk about any kind of legislation, and it's the biggest market in the legal sports betting world. So it's no surprise we're focusing a lot of attention on a new bill that was just filed on Wednesday that could be the most aggressive restrictions we've seen so far on sports betting apps. This legislation introduced by Assemblymember Robert Carroll would cap the daily betting, the amount you're able to bet at $5,000 per user. So once you bet $5,000, you have to wait a whole 24 hours, and you can only do 5 deposits a day. It would also institute a ban on ads that promote any bonus bets, odds boost, and no sweat offers, which, as we know, are really central components of the sports betting marketing plan. It would also ban advertising between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. and during live sporting events, which we know is a huge time for sportsbooks to try to get users to sign up. And when most sportsbook ads actually run, the bill has just been referred to the Racing and Wagering Committee, which has historically supported industry-backed proposals. This obviously is not a proposal that the industry is in favor of, and it means it will face probably a lot of resistance in the legislature. But I'm not sure this bill really goes anywhere in terms of actually getting passed and implemented. But the fact that it was just introduced is a very important thing to note. It is the nation's largest betting market, and it mirrors a lot of similar proposals that we've seen on a federal level. New York has generated over $3 billion in tax revenue since launching sports betting in 2022. They have the highest tax rate in the nation. It's been a very tough market for books to pretty much break even on, but you can't really leave the market because then you're going to be ceding it to other players. Critics warn that it could drive high stakes bettors to offshore sports books where they don't have these kind of penalties or limits. Or even to New Jersey, which obviously was a huge market when sports betting first launched. It was the state that basically got the sports betting ban overturned. But then once New York launched, lost a lot of money. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I don't really think it goes anywhere, but you never know what kind of language could get included somewhere down the line if there's some proposal. And New York is one of those states we've talked about a lot where they're considering other gaming changes, especially with online sports betting. So you don't know what will kind of be a concession and what will make it down the line there. But it's definitely something we're going to keep watching and see if other states, have any similar proposals down the line.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't really heard the term max bets anywhere since sports betting has become legal. I mean, some do have some restrictions based on games, some smaller college basketball games, football games as well. But I mean, there's a definitive line in the sand here if they choose to pass this through. All right, so sport event contracts, prediction markets, the story of the year for us here when we talk, Sam, and everyone over at Legal Sports Report. Some states say, okay, no problem. Other states say you got to pay your taxes like everybody else. So in this case, our latest story is the state saying no go, got to pay taxes, got to be like the rest of the sports gaming operators. I guess we'll just have to see what happens here.
Yeah, it's a similar story when we were, when I was on the show last year talking about daily fantasy sports and sort of the parlay products that they had that a lot of states said were sports betting. Now we're doing the same thing with these prediction markets, which companies like Kalshi, Robinhood, Crypto.com have been basically using to try to skirt sports betting laws, offer a very similar product. Tennessee is just the latest state to get involved in this, but they're actually the first one to ask the federal regulator to step in and shut down these sports prediction markets, which puts new pressure on the markets themselves. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission has been basically trying to figure out how they regulate this. It's under a new regime under President Trump. So it's been a while since they really have gotten all their ducks in a row. Meanwhile, you've had 9 states now take some action against them. A lot of them have sent cease and desists, arguing that what these companies are offering is actually real money wagers, and they're doing it in 50 states without sports betting licenses, without protections, without any of the taxes that we just talked about briefly. So you have the industry watching it to see if this can continue, and they're not subject to the same regulations on both fronts. So now momentum is basically building against these companies, all while we wait the CFTC to intervene here. We've had the federal court case in Nevada where the state just sent a cease and desist letter telling them to get out of the state. A judge overruled that, saying they can keep going until the CFTC really chimes in here. But meanwhile, they've handled a lot of money and they keep expanding. We had $500 million just on Kalshi was wagered on March Madness. And then they just launched MLB markets this week as well. So they're expanding basically while the CFTC is trying to figure out how to do things. And meanwhile, states are pushing back, telling them, if you're not licensed to do sports betting in the state, we want you to not offer this product. So we'll see, this is going to be a story we keep watching here, but we'll see when it all comes to a head. We'll see if anything, actually happens as a result of this. I would imagine there'll be a lot more lawsuits, and eventually it's all going to be decided in a court. But this is a very interesting development in this process that, again, only started in January, is when they first started offering these sort of sports prediction markets, which are very similar to sports betting, but they say don't want to be regulated as sports betting. It only started in January, and we're only a couple months into the year, and already it's rapidly expanding. We have now 9 states taking some kind of action against them.
Now, finally, this is a story I know that just popped on here about ESPN Bet. I know that, Sam, you mentioned we're going to talk about this here on social media. Okay, so I'm not positive here how this is going to work. I'm going to require a little bit of an explanation here. So they're calling it Mint Club, which essentially is some sort of way to link media or your app with sports betting. I'm going to need a little bit more here in terms of info here, how this works.
Yeah, Penn Entertainment has been one of those companies we've talked about for a long time. When are they going to actually make progress in sports betting? They have this partnership with ESPN, the ESPN sports betting app. So the latest thing they've done here is launch this new feature called Mint Club, which is only available to those who link their ESPN and ESPN Bet apps, which was, again, one of those core, selling points that they pushed out when they first did this ESPN deal. It will allow users to track their bets in the ESPN app as well as the ESPN Bet app. So if you go to the ESPN app to check your scores, to check how certain players are doing, you have all of the bets that you placed in ESPN in there as well. It's kind of similar to what other apps have done, but again, you can only do this if you link both apps, which is a really big thing that ESPN wants to push here. The last time they talked about account linking, which they only launched in November, you had only about 230,000 people had done it, which is less than 1% of ESPN users. So this is another move to try to promote people who use the ESPN app, people who use ESPN's core assets, to download this app, to link them together so they can promote more of that personalization, take more into account of the teams you like, the sports you like, and try to feed you offers there. It's coming a little late in the game. Penn is obviously under a lot of pressure. They paid $1.5 billion to use ESPN. It's about a year and a half later, and we're just talking about this now, but in their case, it's better late than never. They want to promote the app. They're trying to retool it. They just hired a bunch of execs from FanDuel, a bunch of execs from Disney as well. So they're really trying to push this out and get ahead of it. And that's all while they're in a proxy fight. And the proxy fight is centered around their online sports betting failures and how much money they've wasted. So they're really trying to finally turn it around here. And Mint Club is just the latest kind of offering that is unique because of their ESPN partnership. We'll see how many people adopt it. They announce earnings in about a month. So they're going to hope to get that 230,000 number much, much higher. You don't want to have 1% of your users linked. So we'll see, how it's working out for them in a few months.
Yep, I would agree. And by the way, no offense to ESPN Bet, but if this was such a fantastic idea that's revolutionary and it's going to be a great idea, then why didn't they do it 6 months ago? That would be my question. Anyway, Sam, have a great rest of your weekend. I will talk to you next week. Thanks again.
Yep, thanks a lot, Craig.
All right, we'll take a quick time out, help you get some picks here in the NBA. We've got Adam Kaufman up next. Don't go away. Fantasy baseball. Let's be honest, George. There's a lot of things antiquated about this game that we love. Man, I would love to try some new little wrinkles here. And so for Sam's question here on the show, I think it's at least fair to ask the question, with catchers in fantasy baseball, and sometimes we're playing in 2 catcher leagues, why at this stage of the game? I have no idea. If you're still doing it, you're behind in the times. Buy or sell, catchers should get a fantasy point for throwing out runners trying to steal. So essentially awarding a defensive play to get an offensive point in fantasy. You going to buy or sell this?
I mean, so this never even crossed my mind. I hate the catcher position because they get hurt so much. You play in a 2-catcher league, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, what are we doing here? There are not 24, assuming a 12-team league, there are not 24 catchers to draft in baseball. There's just not. Although I'm the first person to tell you, Herrera's probably out there in a bunch of leagues there because we didn't see that power coming. No. Should he get a point? I think he's going to do this, by the way. Why a point? What are you throwing out? 1, 2 base runners a week? It's 2 points. Who cares? Shouldn't it be more? I mean, if we're going to do this, shouldn't we do it right? Shouldn't it be 5 points? So I would probably go that direction. If you're going to do it right. Give him more points. And by the way, then let's go further. You make an error, you're losing points. No one gets an error anymore. All right, if you get an error, it means you really screwed up. Watching that Yankee-Pittsburgh game yesterday, because I think it was who cares? Somebody hit the ball hard to Isaiah Felifa at shortstop. He didn't have to move, but he dropped it. They called it a hit because he hit the ball hard with 3-hopper. Oh, hard hit, error. So let's do that too. So yeah, I'm kind of on board with this, but you need more than one. It can't just be a point that's meaningless. You need more than one.
Fantasy Sports Today. Weekends starting at 8 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. First time I've ever said that wrong in my history doing the show. Good job. We've got some big playoff matchups coming up this weekend. Adam Kaufman is with us to preview them all. If the NBA playoffs are your thing, then your thing would be this segment because Adam's ready to give us some positions this weekend. Adam, welcome back to the show here. Let's get right into it. We got a lot of games to cover. So we're going to wait on a couple of matchups here with the play-in. That'll work itself out tonight. We do know this. The Indiana Pacers have a home playoff series. My gosh, it feels like it's been a really long time since we've seen this. And they are pretty big favorites tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks, total of 225. The Bucks, Adam, did get some good news. It appears as though Damian Lillard's going to play in this series, but he's not going to play tonight. What happens in game one between Indiana and Milwaukee?
Well, we're going to wait till the weekend to get a little bit more clarity, obviously. But with Damian Lillard, you're right. He's not going to play in the series opener. And from there, we go game to game and we'll see. You know, I think that on the one hand, Shams Charania, who broke this news over at ESPN from the doctors telling us that he is expected to be available in the series, but so quickly ruled out for game one, it does kind of give you a little bit of pause to wonder if maybe the cards being placed ahead of the horse at this point in time. For instance, would anyone be shocked if, again, so quickly ruled out for game one? Well, what if he doesn't play in game two? And at that point in time, maybe the Bucks are down 0-2 and they just sort of say, what's the point? You know, if he's not entirely ready, he's not entirely... I just don't understand why he come out with the news that he's good to go if he's not actually good to go. Independent of that, yes. I mean, the Damian Lillard factor is a gigantic one in terms of trying to figure out how to handicap this series, even knowing that he is going to miss the start of it. No duo in the NBA this year, Craig, scored more points combined than Giannis and Dame, north of 55 points per game. So if you only have one of those guys, and we know the Bucks have had really just tough playoff luck in recent years, usually surrounding Giannis, Chris Middleton, another guy as well, who's obviously no longer there, but there's just always somebody, a key guy that is missing in these postseason series, and it doesn't feel like this year is going to be any exception. I expect the Pacers to win this series. I realize that's not any sort of a hot take. As you said, they are the favorites in this one. I think the way that I would play it, though, if you're not looking to lay the juice with Indiana to just win the series, and I understand that, and that would be right around minus 164, why don't you just go over 5.5 games? You have the belief there that maybe Indy wins it. At the very least, Milwaukee puts up a fight. You know, Indiana, with this huge turnaround from last year, this team, you know, is 34-14 in the 2025 calendar year. They've been scorching hot since the start of January. I know they were a playoff team last year and went out in a sweep, a competitive sweep, if you want to call it that, to the Celtics. But this team is going to come in hungry, looking for revenge, a deeper run. I think Milwaukee just doesn't have the depth on the other side to be able to compete over the course of the entire series.
Yeah, fair stuff. Great breakdown there. What about Giannis? Let's take a look at his points here. 32.5 over on FanDuel is his point total. 12.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, plus 290 triple-double. I mean, Giannis pretty regularly is hitting a lot of these numbers. I don't know that he'll hit all three, though, Adam. Do you like any of these?
I'd go over on the points because, again, I think he's kind of out there doing it by himself. All due respect to, you know, Brooke Lopez or Kyle Kuzma, those guys. But if you don't have Dame, at least, again, for game one, and who knows, maybe beyond that, that's when Giannis is going to have to be that guy. And it's not like the Pacers don't know that. They're not going to try and take him out, limit him as best they can. Even still, he's going to have to overcome that and you know, outlast some of the size that's on the other side. I feel like some of the rebounding has been a little inconsistent with Giannis, but generally speaking, especially with the star missing in Lillard, the points are there. And so I'm sure as hell not going under on Giannis's points, and I would be inclined to go over in game one.
All right, Pistons and Knicks. That's another intriguing series, I think, because I do think that Detroit's played some great basketball this season. And I guess to just put it mildly, Adam, I don't think they're going to get swept. I think that they're going to win a game or two. They play tomorrow at 6 o'clock Eastern. The Knicks are now up to 7-point favorites on FanDuel. I saw 6.5 earlier in the week, total 220.5. We know that this is a lot about Cade Cunningham here, and specifically to cover the spread. Do you think that he does enough to keep this close?
Yeah, man, I'll take it a step further. Pistons are plus 330 to win the series, and that's exactly what my investment would be. I think Detroit wins this thing. You know, this team, I know they were a sub 500 team there for a while earlier in the season, but they have rallied in a big way. Talking about turnarounds, Detroit has won 30 more games this year than it did last year. That is the sixth biggest turnaround in NBA history. And Tibbs is Tibbs, man, when it comes to New York. No starting five has played more combined minutes in the NBA this season at almost 1,000 than New York's. Tibbs runs his guys into the ground. Couple that with the fact that there are some injuries. They're not necessarily as mentally tough, as physically tough as they were last year when they had, and I'm not attributing this to one guy individually, but, you know, just it was a different makeup with Randall and DiVincenzo and Hartenstein and all of these guys. It looks different this year. Anyone who watches this team knows that the Knicks don't look as tough as they did last year. Coach is as big a Knicks supporter as you will find. I have said this to his face, and he did not disagree. Yes, he thinks the Knicks are going to win the series. They're favorites. They should win the series. I think they're going to get surprised. If there's any dog in a series that I like across the entire NBA, it is Detroit to surprise New York here in round one.
Yeah, and look, the Knicks have not beaten good teams all season long. I think that's fair to say. I think Detroit is a good team. All right, let's pivot over to a series I know you'll have your eye on very closely. It's Boston and Orlando, where the Celtics are opening up. Wow, 13.5-point favorites in game one. I think that probably, Adam, my take on this and watching Boston through the years in the playoffs is that there's a lot of sleepwalking going on. Like, I think that they may even sweep the Magic here, but I don't know, man. I'm just not into laying points with Boston in the first round of the playoffs.
No, I would, if anything, probably take Orlando with the points in game one. You know, Boston's had a long layoff. We don't really know what the health is of Jaylen Brown going into this game. The Magic, obviously, are fresher. They're confident. They're coming off a blowout in the play-in to advance. So, yeah, I support that. I don't think Boston absolutely rolls in game one. I do think the Celtics ultimately win, and they should as a double-digit favorite. But in terms of the series, I think that's sort of the microcosm of it, right? Orlando probably takes a game. It's a gentleman's sweep instead of an actual sweep. And Boston rolls on into the next series and right on into the NBA Finals. And we'll see who's over there in the West to represent.
Yep. All right, Adam, we're out of time. Thanks for coming on the show. Enjoy the games this weekend.
You as well.
We'll be right back.
Want to play roulette? Here's a tip. European roulette has a lower house edge than American style. The lower the house edge, the better shot you have at winning. Most online casinos offer European roulette. So, if I were you, I'd get spinning. Now, go get lucky. See you in Las Vegas. Let's get lucky.
Okay, what tools can you use to measure those things a bit? And that's where you have like force plates and 3D motion and launch monitors, things like that. But that's all just sort of like measuring what's happening. That doesn't necessarily explain why one guy's really good and another guy's not really good. And that's where there's still kind of like this ongoing, how do you like continue to do research to understand that better? And I think that's going to last well past my lifetime.
The Smiley Show, only on SportsGrid.
I'm still optimistic eventually this will happen and they'll get it together. I mean, if Florida can get their act together, Sam, with the tribes, I believe that California can too.
It would bring a lot of money to the tribe, which is also something they really care about. It's an $8 billion market. Conservatively, it could be even more when it legalizes. The sports books would be sharing revenue with the tribes, essentially doing all their operations and forking over a percentage directly to the tribes.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
King of the featherweight division for the BKFC. That is King Kai Stewart, who is joining us now, still the champion of the featherweight.
Though he did get dominated, he was still throwing big shots. He landed a lot bigger shots on Palomino than he did me, and I wasn't really impressed. Palomino's getting older. He is definitely a former GOAT. He has done amazing things in this sport, but it's just my time.
Only on SportsGrid.
You know what other big event is going on this weekend? I said it was a slow week this week in sports. I guess I did not incorporate WrestleMania, which is going on Saturday and Sunday this week. And I don't know, I have a hard time gravitating to that, but I understand that's a big deal. We'll talk about that. We'll also hit on what happened to, or may have happened to, pitcher Patrick Corbin. And also, I said that we were done talking about Rory McIlroy and the Masters yesterday, but apparently I lied. It's time now for some last licks. All right, so we currently have the RBC Heritage Open going on right now. Rory McIlroy is going to take some time off and not play golf this week, maybe next week as well. He will return, of course, and play in the PGA Championship, which is coming up next month. And yesterday, as I said here on the show, I think we're done talking about the Masters. I think we're done talking about Rory McIlroy, but it's been such a great story. It's the gift that keeps on giving. We've been doing it every day. How about this one? I didn't realize this, but Rory McIlroy is the most popular athlete everywhere in the country right now because of his win at the Masters, but more so on eBay. That's right. 6,000%. That is the number that his searches are up right now. So that means if you are on the eBay site, maybe looking for some sports memorabilia, sports cards, golf, etc., his search engine numbers are up 6,000% compared to where it was the week before. So it's sort of an unprecedented number. It does happen in sports. Somebody, wins a World Series or wins a Super Bowl, and you see a big jump in sales. Happens all the time. Sometimes 1,000%, but you generally don't see this number. 6,000% people buying Rory McIlroy stuff all this week and last week as well. All right, so Patrick Corbin has been pitching in the big leagues a long time, long enough to remember that he used to pitch for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Those are snakes. Remember that? Also pitched for the Washington Nationals, won a World Series with them as well. But did you know a couple of nights ago that Patrick Corbin almost missed his start against the Angels after he was bit by what they suspect is a venomous spider on Monday? In fact, he showed up to the game and was barely even able to walk in the clubhouse. This is a crazy story before the game. And then he went out and pitched. And he threw 5 innings, 5 1/3, 1 earned run, 6 strikeouts, and ended up beating the Los Angeles Angels. So some sort of nickname is coming here, some sort of T-shirt, some sort of giveaway. I don't know what it is. By the way, I don't think a lot of people thought Patrick Corbin would still be pitching in the big leagues this season, let alone pitching well. It's kind of crazy, considering his last few years in Washington. But hey, maybe he's the new Spider-Man of Major League Baseball. All right, finally, this weekend, it's back on again, WrestleMania. Which number is this, fellas? No idea. But the WWE is selling the exact gear that John Cena wore when he turned heel last month at the Elimination Chamber for $75,000. Okay, now I see it here. Thank you. WrestleMania 41 is this weekend. It takes place Saturday and Sunday, and Sunday night is the main event as Cody Rhodes will battle John Cena for the WWE Championship. Cena's trying to win his 17th world title, which would break Ric Flair's record of 16. True story. True story. I've never been to a actual WrestleMania, but I went to a movie theater and watched it on what used to be called closed circuit television, WrestleMania 2, at a movie theater in Miami. Absolutely true story. Went to see. I used to go to the WWF matches all the time. Haven't watched a WrestleMania probably in 25 years, but I understand its popularity, and I'm sure a lot of you will be watching or streaming however you watch it this weekend. So have fun doing that. All right, that'll do it for our show today. Thanks to everybody for watching all week long. We had a lot of fun, I think. Good shows, despite kind of a slow week. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow for Fantasy Sports Today, by the way. More fantasy baseball talk. But coming up next is Smiley Kaufman with the latest on the RBC Heritage, so stay tuned to that. If you want to know who's going to win these play-in games tonight before the NBA playoffs begins on Saturday, here's what you do. 3 o'clock Eastern, pop back on, turn on Scott Farrell. He is coast to coast at 3 o'clock. That's followed by Game Time Decisions. And then during the Heat and Hawks game, we've got in-game live game day. And then Gabe will recap the Heat and Hawks tonight on Sports Rage and also update you on the big game tonight between Dallas and Memphis. And, of course, the Stanley Cup playoffs in hockey. I'm sure Gabe will be talking about that. Those begin this weekend as well. Thanks to our director, Luke, and for my producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. Thanks to Adam Kaufman for coming on the show, Sam McQuillan, Gilbert McGregor, and Danny Burke, all great guests all week long. We'll see you back here for our next edition of NewsWire, which will be Monday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern as we go full-on NFL draft coverage here on this show. It begins Monday at 11 a.m., so I hope you enjoy your weekend. Catch you tomorrow morning for some fantasy baseball talk. If not, see you back here Monday on our next edition of NewsWire. See you then.